Crossing the realm of cultivation, Poman obtained the purple source wheel that could extract various extraordinary abilities. Turning the wheel for the first time, ding, extract fragments of Superman's physique, 0.001%, to obtain the ability of photosynthesis, which can be carried out under sunlight to meet the physiological needs of the body, without the need for food. Subsequently, gradually extract fragments of the same physique to synthesize the complete version of Superman's body. Turning the wheel for the second time, ding, extract the Immortal Rebellion World ability, soul swallowing, and the soul will be transformed into soul swallowing. It has an incredible ability to reverse the law of soul creation, and can strengthen its own elemental spirit by devouring all consciousness bodies such as wandering souls, divine souls, and elemental gods. Turning the wheel for the third time, ding, draw the undead forensic ability, water resurrection. After anchoring the resurrected water, it can be resurrected infinitely without any cooldown or consumption. Turning the wheel for the fourth time, ding, you have been drawn to the zombie world, first Pangu clan bloodline, and mutated in synergy with the complete version of Superman's body. You have obtained the form of Doomsday zombie ancestor and have the ability to adapt to evolution. Turning the wheel for the fifth time, ding, extract the ability to devour the world called Soul God Kingdom, and create heaven and earth in the soul. Keywords of the novel. From drawing to superhuman constitution, there are no pop-ups for cultivation. From drawing to superhuman constitution, there are no pop-ups. From drawing to superhuman constitution, there is a complete download of the text. From drawing to superhuman constitution, there are the latest chapters for cultivation. Chapter 1. Zun Wheel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Zun Wheel. Mount Taishan is the highest mountain among the 5 mountains. It is also called Daizong because all the mountains belong to it. Throughout history, emperors and kings have held grand ceremonies of offering sacrifices to the gods on this mountain, and there is also a spectacular sight of the divine beauty of the creation bell, the cutting of yin and yang at dawn. Poman and 3 roommates climbed Mount Taishan during the May Day Golden Week holiday. In order to see the sunrise spectacle, the 4 people started to set out at night and climbed to the Riguan Peak to watch the sunrise before dawn. Although several people chatted and laughed along the way, exhausted, time passed quickly. After a long journey, they finally arrived at Riguan Peak in time. Perhaps due to the May Day Golden Week holiday, when they arrived at Riguan Peak, the mountaintop was already overcrowded and they couldn't find a suitable viewing spot. Encouraged by their roommate Li Shuezhe, the 4 of them struggled to climb to another steep cliff. The night breeze blew, and the wooden sign of "Tourist Stop" not far away swayed slightly, slapping the iron chains and making a continuous, popping sound. Not long after, an orange line appeared on the horizon, gradually rendering the sea of clouds orange-red. Under the pitch-black night sky, amidst the tumultuous mountain mist, a red sun slowly rose. Amidst the thrilling spectacle, Zhang Kuang stood on the side and couldn't help but shout loudly. Ah! Ah! I'm crazy. I am Li Shuezhe. Listening to the shouting in his ear, Poman also became passionate and opened his hands to his mouth, shouting at the rising sun. Ah, I'm Poman. My English name is Superman, and I'm Superman Poman, Li Shuezhe suddenly said from behind. Manzi, if you're Superman, then you'll have to wear underwear and wear it outside in the future. Hee 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 hee. Ha ha ha, it's okay, Manzi. This is very superhero. Right, first do the first step. The first step for Superman is to wear underwear. The other few people also started to coax along. Poman was about to refute a few words when he suddenly saw a purple lightning flash in the sea of clouds. As soon as he saw the purple light, it had already arrived in front of him in the next moment. I'll do it. Close your eyes tightly, a large purple light instantly explodes. Then his consciousness fell into endless purple light, surrounded by warmth as if enveloped by something. Sanyin Continent, Pugwa, Southeast Sea Area. Supa opened his eyes in a daze and began to look around. The first thing that caught his eye was the endless deep blue ocean, which surged one after another, and the small boat under him was also swaying. Where is this? Don't I watch the sunrise in Mount Taishan? His mind has completely crashed, filled with countless question marks. A sea smell rushed into his nostrils, and a seabird flew over and pulled down a pile of bird droppings, landing on his head with a loud bang. Touch and smell. Nausea. What a foul smell. Pop. Then he slapped himself hard, and the burning pain instantly woke him up. This is not a dream. TMD Li Shueja, I knew it wouldn't be good to follow you. Although it is not clear what the current situation is, Poman is very sure that something must have happened to him at the top of Mount Taishan before he was brought to the sea. Did the alien spaceship study me and throw me into the ocean? Poman guessed and looked at the small boat under him. This ship is at most 2 meters long, the mast has broken, the sail has fallen to the stern, and the cabin is damaged for some unknown reason. The bottom of the fishing boat also has a tangled fishing net, which looks very outdated in craftsmanship. It is made of a special black rattan grass weaving. In what era do we use sails instead of diesel engines? These details plunged Poman into contemplation, and a bad premonition surfaced in his heart. The surging seawater caused the small boat to move up and down, and Po's face turned pale. He only felt that the bucket of instant noodles he had eaten on the mountaintop almost vomited out. I have never taken a boat since I was young, and I never expected to get seasick. What kind of thing is this? Poman felt a bit uncomfortable and quickly lay down, leaning against the side board of the ship, slowly closing his eyes. Oh, this is. After closing his eyes, he was surprised to find a purple antique wheel in front of him, engraved with mysterious patterns. That kind of pattern does not belong to any type of writing, it has a magical power that can attract people's hearts and minds. Amidst the flickering purple light, Poman vaguely saw the wheel turn a grid. Click. A strange wave spread out from the roulette wheel, followed by a light curtain appearing below the wheel. Rows of text appeared on the screen, which were not the familiar Chinese characters he was familiar with, but strangely, he could understand the meaning of these words. Purple source wheel, name. Poman, realm. None, bloodline. Ordinary human race, ability. None, energy point. 10, comes with purple source, note. Starting from a minimum of 10 energy points, the more energy points used, the more complete the abilities, supernatural powers, bloodlines, and techniques extracted, and the higher the likelihood of drawing stronger abilities. You can extract energy points with different values such as 11, 12, 12.5, 50, 100, etc. The higher the energy point consumption, the better the roulette reward. Extractable quantity. 1. Click to extract, current extraction target. Bronze Superman 0%, due to strong host intention, lying slot. Lying slot. Poman, who was originally sickly, suddenly straightened up with an incredible expression in his eyes, and his heart was also shocked by this sudden scene. Is this the legendary golden finger? Poman was extremely excited, and under the excitement, the feeling of seasickness and nausea disappeared. Then he looked at the fishing boat and an idea came to his mind. I'm really meowing, isn't it time to travel? However, these details alone cannot make him certain of this. After trying to calm his mood, Poman closed his eyes again and lightly touched the words, click to extract, with his mind. The screen of light blurred for a moment, and Poman saw the strange wheel spinning around, followed by messages passing through his mind. Among the search targets. Establishing link, extracting. Drip, successfully extracted, obtained superhuman constitution fragments, strengthened to primary light energy constitution, can absorb sunlight energy to meet physiological needs of the body, no need to eat, normal consumption will not cause hunger throughout the day, no combat power bonus. Superman only felt a warm current pouring into his body, and then his pores all over his body relaxed, as if his genes and flesh were being modified by a gentle force. After a few minutes of this feeling, it slowly subsided. When he opened his eyes again, the big sun above his head gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Opening his eyes to the sun no longer felt glaring, but rather a strange sense of satisfaction. Under the sunlight, Superman half squinted his eyes and enjoyed it quietly. The feeling of seasickness had disappeared, and the emptiness caused by staying up late to watch island country cultural films had gradually been satisfied. Gay. This ability is amazing. You don't have to eat anything to bask in the sun. It's great. If you're playing on an island to survive, then I can definitely come back with a big prize or challenge some projects with bonuses. It's so delicious. The only regret is that he didn't increase his combat power. If only he could draw Superman's iron body, he wouldn't be afraid of sharks biting him at all. But it's still okay, at least he wouldn't be afraid of starving to death. Super was enjoying the comfort brought by the sunlight, feeling that the previously missing nutrients were constantly being replenished. He lay at the bottom of the cabin, drowsily falling asleep again. The new book is on its way, please vote and nourish it. Today is a special day. Wishing all college entrance exam candidates the best of their lives and the opportunity to be admitted to their desired universities. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Demon Turtle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Demon Turtle. At night, the waves on the sea gradually calmed down, and an immensely huge moon shone in the night sky, with silver-white clear rays falling down, making the sea appear somewhat sparkling. Occasionally, a school of fish swims through this area, causing tiny waves on the sea surface. Compared to the stormy waves in the daytime, these small waves appear somewhat insignificant. Gollum ouo. Shoo. The sounds of various strange marine animals mixed together, and Poman slowly woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the big and terrifying moon. My dear mother, how could the moon be so big? Poman stared at the strangely large moon in a daze, recalling the moon he had seen before, and his heart became somewhat uneasy. No, such a big moon doesn't look like Earth. It's 7 or 8 times the size. Po looked surprised and muttered to himself. The moonlight shone on his slightly immature face, causing his skin to reflect a translucent white light. As a freshman, Poman has just turned 18 this year and looks pretty. After being exposed to the sun all day, his skin has not shown any signs of turning black, but now he appears even fairer. If there were a mirror at this moment, Poman would surely appreciate it narcissistically for 2 hours. Wow, just as he was stunned, a giant object broke through the sea in the distance. Its massive body was the size of a bungalow, with an oval-shaped turtle shell covered in green fur and a large black head. It sucked its neck towards the moon and occasionally let out a low growl like a cow's roar. So big. A turtle. Super instinctively picked up the wood pulp and pulled it towards the distance twice. Although the biology teacher told him that turtles don't eat people, he really didn't want to take risks with such a big turtle. What if I become sperm? Just thinking of this, it seemed to be to confirm his speculation. A faint white light seemed to emanate from the mouth and nose of the giant turtle, blurring the moonlight that fell in front of it. Oh, my God, this big bastard has really become an elite. He is still swallowing the essence of moonlight. No, I have to hurry. Poman pulled the wooden oar even harder, his mind churning incessantly as he rowed. Although unwilling to admit it, he has determined that this place should not be on Earth anymore. Thinking of the golden finger in my mind, I let out a heavy sigh. It's not bad either. I have golden fingers and should be able to do well in this world. Now, taking advantage of the calm weather, I quickly row in one direction and try to find the land. It's also dangerous to drift on the sea all the time. Maybe I'll feed the sharks at some point. Having made up his mind, Poman rowed a small boat towards the opposite direction of the moon, with the wood paddling against the sea. The boat advanced at an extremely slow speed. After rowing continuously for an unknown amount of time, Poman still saw an endless sea, unable to even see a small island. He felt a slight pain in his arm, threw the wooden oar into the small boat, and then lay flat at the bottom of the cabin, drifting with the waves. As for whether the small boat will deviate from its direction, mind it. Now Poman just wants to lie down and rest. Under the night sky, a small boat appears insignificant on the sea surface. The night gradually deepened, and the clouds gradually rose up, blocking the moonlight. Poman fell asleep in a daze. In the dream, he was in the seawater and saw the huge sea turtle. The ferocious sea turtle had sharp horns on its head and sharp fangs densely covering its mouth, ready to bite him. Ah, no. Yume. Poman roared loudly and suddenly stood up, only to be shocked to find that he was not beside the demon turtle. Fortunately, it was a dream. He took a long breath and touched the sweat on his head, his face a bit pale. As I looked up and saw the yellow sun in the sky, I felt an inexplicable sense of security in my heart. The sunlight shining from the sky filled his body with energy, and the muscle soreness caused by rowing hard last night disappeared completely. There was a warm feeling in his stomach. Then he stood up and looked into the distance, without seeing any traces of islands or continents, which made him particularly disheartened. Ah, I don't know how long I'll be drifting yet. When I was a child, I often read Robinson Crusoe, but now I'm also drifting on the sea. Poman calmed down, then grabbed the wood pulp and paddled in the constant sunshine. Although this basic light energy physique does not add combat power, it feels full of energy when exercising in the sunlight, and muscles do not feel sore. The effect is still very strong. It would be great if it could be upgraded again. I don't know how to obtain that energy point. Poman paddled while closing his eyes and opening the wheel light curtain. Purple source wheel, name. Poman, realm. None, bloodline. Primary light energy constitution ability. Photosynthesis, energy point. 0, minimum 10 energy points can be extracted once, extractable quantity. 0, click to extract, current extraction target. Bronze Superman 0.01 per thousand. Does Bronze Superman have a 1000th and 1000th ability? And that doesn't mean I now have Superman's 1000th and 1000th strength, and the true strength is estimated to be less than 1/1,000,000th. Poman felt extremely passionate at the thought of Superman's unparalleled strength, and a desire arose in his heart. That feeling was like the feeling of a favorite game, activity, recharge, and rebate 10 times the diamond, but unfortunately, there are no energy points for him to recharge now. Energy point. What exactly is this energy point and how can I obtain it? There's no manual, so it seems I can only explore it myself. vigorously paddled the wooden oars, and the small boat gradually drifted away in the waves. On the 5th day of drifting in the sea, the originally sunny weather changed at any moment, and the sun was covered by thick dark clouds. The moist water vapor made Poman feel a sense of panic in his heart. Roaming and rumbling lightning and thunder. There were many fish floating on the sea surface, with their mouths open and closed in front of the dark clouds. Not long after, pouring rain poured down from the thick dark clouds. The small boat quickly accumulated water, and Poman quickly carried a wooden bucket to drain out. The rapid sea breeze made him shiver all over. This ship shouldn't have been scattered by filming. Subconsciously, I felt something was wrong. Frowned as he looked at the dilapidated small boat under him, and then at the large waves accumulated in the distance. Amidst the fierce wind and rain, this small boat endured everything alone, with every inch submerged in seawater. In order to prevent the small boat from being overturned by the waves, Poman ignored the drainage and frantically paddled his wooden oars, heading away from the huge waves. It's just that human labor cannot rival the power of nature. The towering waves approached rapidly, and the first time they turned around, they were just a distant line. Looking back again, Poman couldn't help but be frightened and his soul burst out. Dozens of meters of waves overturned, and Poman only had time to stare and shout loudly. Pills. The small boat slowly floated towards the tip of the waves, and then the waves fell violently. There was a loud roar in his ear, followed by the sound of gurgling water, followed by a powerful attack. Poman's eyes were filled with stars, and he fainted directly. Please use the recommended tickets and magic weapons in your hands to insult me to the fullest with all the immortal masters and ancestors. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Adventures on a Deserted Island. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Adventures on a Deserted Island Under the Sunshine, on a beach modeled with gravel. Poman gradually became aware, and his first sensation was that his whole body was sore and numb because he had been soaking in seawater for too long. Fortunately, the labor and capital were tough and didn't die. I opened my eyes in a daze and wanted to get up, but found that I had no strength all over. However, under the sunlight, his body regained some strength and was no longer cold. After about half an hour, Supa sat up trembling and rubbed his body with his hands. Looking back on the storm that day, he felt a wave of fear. If it weren't for luck rushing to the shore, he would definitely have died. After sitting for a while, his basic light energy constitution restored some vitality and he stood up to look far away. This is a small island that can be seen at a glance, about the size of a football field, with a protruding rocky mountain in the center. On the other side of the stone mountain, there is a large area of tall trees growing. The entire stone mountain looks lush and full of vitality, and there are also some unknown weeds that are half a person tall clustered around the edge of the stone mountain. This wild grass is brownish-green in color, with leaves resembling sharp swords. A sharp aura lingers around the edges of the leaves, and even when viewed from a distance, Poman feels a sense of heart and flesh trembling. Poman strolled towards the rocky mountain, hoping to climb high and see if there were any other places around the island, preferably closer to the mainland with some people, so that he could figure out what kind of world he was in now. As Poman approached the rocky mountain, he felt even more extraordinary about the unknown wild grass in front of him. They swayed slightly, reflecting a metallic luster in the sunlight. I don't know if it was a hallucination, he even faintly heard the sound of sword chanting. What a strange weed. You need to be careful. Supa approached the rocky mountain with a solemn expression on his face, and then carefully pushed away the sword-shaped weeds with his hand. Shit. The sound of the sharp blade cutting through the flesh came, and Poman was momentarily stunned, then felt pain coming from the back of his hand. Staring wide-eyed, the slightly curved sword-shaped wild grass actually cut through the back of his hand. What a sharp blade of grass, comparable to a regular paper cutter. Fortunately, I noticed in advance that the movement was not significant just now, and the wound was very shallow. Just as he was stunned, a hint came to his mind. Ding, detected energy, is it converted into an energy point? Supa was overjoyed and once again touched the blade of the sword-shaped wild grass with his fingers. Sure enough, a prompt sound came to his mind asking if it had been converted into an energy point. Yes. Conversion completed, you have obtained 0.1 energy points. A faint light flashed through the purple wheel in my mind, and then the unknown wild grass in front of me withered at a speed visible to the naked eye, almost instantly turning gray-black and losing all its vitality. Poman quickly went to check the energy points, but found that the energy points had only increased by 0.1 points, far from the energy points required for further extraction. However, when he noticed the clusters of sword-shaped weeds growing everywhere near the valley, a joyful expression appeared on his face. These are all energy points. Poman cautiously touched another sword-shaped wild grass, and indeed, a warning sound came to his mind again. Ding, detected energy, is it converted into an energy point? Yes. Conversion completed, you have obtained 0.1 energy points. Not long after, he had cleared all the sword-shaped weeds near the valley. He looked excitedly at the number of energy points on the roulette screen and felt that the starting funds were sufficient. Just this sword-shaped wild grass alone earned him 52.9 energy points. If he were to draw 10 energy points once, he could draw a full 5 times. Hee, iron body, I'm coming. Poman smiled foolishly, and a scene of himself flying to the sky and escaping to the ground, receiving missiles with his body came to mind. Then, with a thought, he directly clicked on the extraction with his mind. All energy points were cleared directly, transformed into a faint light and thrown into the purple roulette wheel. Immediately after, the light curtain became blurry. Superman saw the purple source roulette wheel rotate a circle, and messages streamed into his mind. Among the search targets. Establishing link, extracting. Ding, spent 52.9 energy points, successfully extracted, obtained intermediate light energy constitution, can absorb solar energy, gradually enhance constitution, strength and defense will continue to improve with constitution. Purple source wheel, name. Poman, realm. None bloodline. Intermediate light energy constitution ability. Photosynthetic enhancement, energy point. 0, minimum 10 energy points can be extracted once, extractable quantity. 0, click to extract, current extraction target. Bronze Superman 0.06 per thousand. Superman felt slightly disappointed when he saw this increase. I didn't expect to be able to improve so much by smashing over 50 energy points, and I don't know when I can reach the level of a steel body, let alone other extraordinary abilities. At noon, the sun was shining brightly, and Poman felt his whole body bathed in warm sunshine. His originally thin and weak body was becoming stronger at a perceptible speed. Although the change was not particularly obvious, he could vaguely sense it. This is already very terrifying. With such a speed of physical enhancement, Poman would lie down and do nothing but bask in the sun every day. In half a month, he would be able to defeat those world boxing champions from his past life. That's pretty good too. Find more strange weeds like this, and I believe your strength will improve even faster. Poman comforted himself and found a relatively gentle route towards the top of the rocky mountain. Not only is it unobstructed, allowing for better exposure to the sun, but it also allows him to see further, making it easier for him to find a way out. Although I don't need to eat, I can't be trapped on this island for the rest of my life. The stone mountain is not too high, but it is also extremely difficult to climb. In some places, it even requires both hands and feet. When he climbed halfway up the mountain, he suddenly heard a warning sound. Ding, detected energy, is it converted into an energy point? Poman showed an expression of surprise and uncertainty, looking around in confusion. There doesn't seem to be anything unusual, how could there be energy? The next second, when he chose to absorb energy with his mind, a sudden burst of thick fog erupted in front of him, causing the entire rocky mountain to shake and debris to fly. Boom! Po's body was covered in soil and rocks, and before he could carefully listen to how many energy points he had obtained, he fell into a large pit along with the soil and rocks. Fortunately, the difference was not significant, and Poman managed to stabilize his figure. After the dust cleared, a long corridor appeared in front of him. The surrounding stone walls were exceptionally smooth, as if they had been carved out by some divine weapon. Is this a tomb pit? Poman scratched his head and looked around, only to find a strange spot under the pile of gravel he was standing on. He bent down to clean the gravel, only to find that it was a strange and complex circular pattern that made him dizzy. The 3 crystal clear lines were connected to a metal shell, each with a transparent stone embedded inside. However, at this moment, cracks appeared on all 3 stones. It's a bit like a legendary formation. The 3 transparent stones should be energy storage devices similar to batteries, and if nothing unexpected happens, this formation should be used to seal the entrance of the tunnel. Poman thought of this and his heart sank. I shouldn't have stumbled into some cultivator's lair, right? And I also destroyed their formation. Feeling a bit scared, Poman shrank his head and quickly looked around at the situation. There was no light in the extremely dark passage, and in Poman's eyes, it seemed like a terrifying monster devouring people, with his legs slightly limp. Hello, is anyone at home? Sorry to bother you, I'll make some soy sauce. Poman let out a probing cry, but there was no response coming from the pitch-black passage. Ha! He breathed a long sigh of relief and said, "It's okay, it seems there shouldn't be anyone inside." After calming down, he finally had the time to take a glance at the roulette screen, which made him scream out loud. How could the sleeping trough absorb so many energy points? Actively save articles and make explosive updates on the shelves. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Skull. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Skull. The harvest this time is a full 96 energy points, much more than his previous hard work in pulling grass. Is this the kind of spirit stone or some kind of energy mineral from the novel? It contains a lot of energy. Poman bent down and dug out a transparent stone embedded in a metal shell, carefully examining it in his hand. Unfortunately, the transparent stone in my hand would easily shatter into several pieces with just a gentle pinch, and when I held it in my hand, there was no sound of any warning in my mind. These few stones are useless, the energy has already been absorbed by me. After casually throwing away the stone, Poman turned his gaze to the corridor. It was already afternoon, and the sun was slanting westward. The sunlight had already slanted into the corridor, so it was no longer so gloomy and terrifying inside. In order to prevent any mechanism from being present, Poman first threw several stones into the corridor and only walked into it after finding no movement. The stone walls on both sides are still very smooth, without any patterns or murals, and it doesn't seem like a tomb pit. Poman suddenly stopped walking and thought of something. With a thought, he consumed all the 96 energy points he had just obtained on the purple source wheel. Ding! Spent 96 energy points, successfully extracted, obtained advanced light energy constitution, which can absorb solar energy in greatly enhanced physique. Strength, defense, and speed will continuously improve with physique, obtaining new abilities and supervision. Supervision. 1. Perspective, which can penetrate ordinary substances to see their essence. 2. Dynamic vision allows for a state of dynamic capture when focused, and the movement of all things in the world will slow down in the eyes of the host. 3. Super line of sight, even at an altitude of tens of thousands of meters, you can clearly see the tiny hairs of ants on the ground. 4. Night vision objects. Poman felt his new ability and was filled with joy. The previously dim corridor in front of him became as bright as day, and the surrounding situation was also perfectly displayed in his eyes. The stone wall was penetrated by his gaze and reached the inside. At the end of the corridor, a square stone chamber was found. In the center of the chamber was a raised stone platform, and a skeleton sat on it, making a posture of looking up at the sky. That's. After seeing the surrounding situation clearly, Poman no longer had the fear he had before in his heart, because there was no decoration in this passage, and he did not see any mechanism traps or similar formations all the way to the stone chamber. He walked quickly through the corridor, turned a corner, and entered the stone chamber. Under his supervision, everything in front of him appeared exceptionally clear. On the pure white stone platform, a skull sat cross-legged, draped in a blue robe that even his supervision could not see through. The style of this robe was very simple, not like what modern people wear, which made Supa have some speculations in his heart. In addition, he also keenly noticed that there were golden lines on the shimmering white skeleton of this skull, as if gilding, shining with golden rays in the darkness. Poman walked a few steps towards the stone platform, wanting to get closer and observe, but as he approached within 3 meters, his figure stumbled and he hurriedly retreated back. Ha! What kind of person is this? A skeleton after death makes it impossible for me to approach. Poman felt an inexplicable pressure on this skeleton, as if entering another planet with gravity several times greater than before. Every cell and organ in his body would suffer from that terrifying pressure. If it weren't for Poman's slightly stronger body now, he would probably have been crushed to the ground and even more embarrassed if he had entered the skeleton within 3 meters before. After careful consideration, Poman decided to temporarily withdraw from the stone chamber and bask in the sun for a few days before exploring further. Now he has advanced light energy constitution, and sunbathing can greatly enhance his physique. With a strong physique, he will naturally be able to withstand this strange pressure. Poman returned from the original path, and as soon as he walked out of the corridor, the sunlight outside made him feel comfortable all over, as if there were millions of small hands massaging his muscles, so comfortable that he couldn't help but howl loudly. Anyway, there's no one here, so there's no shame or shame. Not long after being exposed to the sun, Poman felt that his strength and physical fitness had greatly improved. With just one gentle effort, he flipped over and jumped out of the previously collapsed pit, with agile movements like the top parkour master in the world. Immediately after, he crouched down and climbed the steep rocky mountain, and soon arrived at the top of the mountain. This place is bare and devoid of any vegetation. Looking ahead, the distance is an endless ocean. Even though Poman now has supervision, he has not found any land within his line of sight. At most, there are some protruding reefs on the sea surface, and not even a ship has been found. Sigh, it seems that I overthought it. Standing on this mountain, I can't see the existence of land, so I have to find other ways to find land. Poman let out a deep sigh in his heart, and then lay on the ground with all fours on his back, closing his eyes and enjoying himself comfortably. For 4 consecutive days, Poman lay here basking in the sun, occasionally standing up and gazing into the distance to see if there were any boats passing by this small island. However, to his disappointment, no ships were found passing by during these 4 days. That afternoon, he decided to explore the skeleton again. He could feel its extraordinary features, and if he could successfully touch the corpse, he would definitely gain some benefits. This is his chance, there is no reason to give up. Halfway up the mountain, he jumped into the deep pit and skillfully drove through the corridor to reach the stone chamber. At this point, Poman showed a solemn expression and cautiously approached the 1 foot inside of the skeleton. As soon as he entered that range, Poman's body trembled and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Fortunately, I can handle it. The continuous exposure to the sun for these 4 days has caused a tremendous change in his physique. Bathing in the sunlight, he feels like he is strengthening every minute and every second. Nowadays, his physical strength is abnormal compared to the special forces trained all year round, and his strength and defense have reached the limit that ordinary humans on Blue Star could reach in their previous lives. Poman slowly moved his steps, sweat oozing from his forehead. He realized that the closer he got to this skeleton, the greater the pressure he was under. At a distance of 1 zhang, it was like the ends of the earth for him, with his muscles tense and the energy stored in his body rapidly depleting. The whole person is like moving in glue, slow and difficult. After spending more than 20 minutes here, Poman finally moved to a distance where he could touch the skull. At this moment, he felt his breathing becoming somewhat difficult, and his entire expression twisted, looking very painful. Sweat soaked his clothes all over his body. After bowing all 30.6 times, Poman was almost trembling for the last time. How could he give up halfway at this last moment? He gritted his teeth and used all his strength to raise his arm. His thighs suddenly charged forward, finally touching the skeleton. Ding! Recommend using the Starting Point Reading app for smoother reading and communication. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Ring. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Ring. Ding! detected energy, is it converted into an energy point? Poman felt that he had reached the end of his crossbow and quickly answered, yes, with his mind, but soon he could no longer hold on and was crushed to the ground by that strange force. Conversion completed, you have obtained 225 energy points. The skeleton, which flickered with golden light before his eyes, turned into powder at a speed visible to the naked eye. The entire skeleton scattered on the ground like flying ash, and the blue cloud-patterned robe that he couldn't even see through seemed to have lost its support and fell directly to the ground. Dingling, a crisp metallic sound sounded. A black ring rolled out of the clothes and hit Poman's head, spinning in place for a few times before stopping. After the skeleton disappeared, the pressure around him also disappeared. Poman kept panting heavily, as if he had just been pulled out of soup. His mouth was wide open and he laughed wildly, just because of the prompt he just heard. Indeed, risks and opportunities coexist. With so many energy points, I don't know what kind of ability I can extract later. Supa thought eagerly. However, what made him frown was that he found himself unable to draw now, as the light screen on the purple source wheel displayed the words, all draws this month have been used up. Can we only draw 3 times a month? What a pity. Poman sighed helplessly, picked up the black ring and put it on his index finger. He then dragged his body out of the hallway. When he saw the sunlight, he couldn't hold on any more and stumbled to the ground. As for the blue robe that he couldn't even see through, he didn't have the strength to take it out now and could only wait until tomorrow. All my strength had been exhausted in the previous confrontation with pressure. Now that I can walk out of the tunnel and come outside, I have exhausted my last bit of strength. The sunlight approaching evening was orange-red, shining on Poman's upper body, with a hint of warmth flowing, greatly relieving his fatigue. The fatigue and soreness all over my body quickly dissipated under the warmth, and my strength began to slowly recover. However, because fighting against pressure had consumed a lot of energy before, he was too lazy to move even a finger at this moment. He lay quietly in the big pit, half squinting his eyes as he watched the gradually falling sunset, feeling very comfortable. Slowly, he closed his eyes and fell asleep when the sky had completely darkened. The huge moon rose, covering the entire island with a layer of silver gauze. In the large pit halfway up the mountain, the snoring echoed incessantly on this quiet island, echoing one after another with the sound of waves not far away. In the middle of the night, after a loud roar, the rocky mountain in the middle of the island collapsed, and the internal stone chambers and corridors were buried by soil and rock. The loud noise did not wake up Poman, who was sleeping soundly. He just frowned and rolled over, then continued to sleep soundly. The next day, Poman woke up in the warmth and comfort of the sunlight, and when he opened his eyes, he saw the disappearing entrance of the corridor and the short rocky mountain, which was somewhat shocked. Gone, that green robe collapsed before it was even taken out. I knew I had to put in some effort to bring it out together, but it doesn't matter. I don't care about things that dead people wear, young master. I, Poman, would never dig such a high mountain for a tattered garment. It's impossible, unless I have a mental illness. Shaking his head and enjoying a sunbathe for a while, Poman got up and climbed to the top of the stone mountain. He looked around but still didn't find any boats passing by. Helpless, Poman can only hope to build his own ship and set sail now. As for the materials for shipbuilding, Poman had already seen very dense trees growing on the other side of the stone mountain, among which a few grew thick, long, and large, which were very suitable for making ships. But now he doesn't have any logging tools and can only find some sharp stones to smash hard. Previously, there should have been only one blade of that sword-shaped wild grass left, which was also a good tool for making logging. Unfortunately, I cleared it all up and had to use stones to grind time. Do whatever you say. After thinking it through, Poman immediately picked a few pieces of gravel on the stone mountain that looked more like an axe, and then picked up some vines to firmly bind them to a wooden stick that was about the size of an arm, making a simple stone axe. This stone axe is not light in weight, making it difficult for ordinary people to pick it up. However, in Superhuman's hands, it is like a plastic toy, effortlessly waving a whimpering, wind-breaking sound. His advanced light energy constitution has given him a physique far beyond that of an ordinary person, and now he has broken the limits of a normal person. Although he is not as strong as the steel body in the movie, his strength and speed are comparable to some carnivorous beast standing at the top of the food chain. Poman descended the rocky mountain from the gentle slope and carried a stone axe around to the side where trees were growing. To be honest, he had never seen this kind of tree before, which was somewhat similar to the poplar tree of the previous blue star, but its leaves were even wider, with the largest leaf already exceeding the size of an adult's palm. The dense leaves brought shade to the forest, but Poman didn't like to stay in the shade. Because he couldn't get in the sun, his strength would slow down. Therefore, starting from the edge of this dense forest, he chose a tree that looked relatively thick and chopped it up with an axe. Collapse. After a muffled sound, Poman felt a huge recoil coming from the stone axe, causing his palms to tingle and the originally bound vines to loosen. However, what caught his eye was a slight dent on the tree trunk, indicating that the stone axe he had made had some effect. With a few dozen more swings, he should be able to cut through the tree. Poman began to continuously wave the stone axe in his hand. Unlike the first time, he did not swing the stone axe with all his might, but instead controlled his strength to prevent it from being damaged too quickly. Waving repeatedly, Poman took off his coat and held a stone axe in both hands, constantly waving in the sun. Collapse, collapse, collapse. The sound of impact kept coming, and it was a laborious process. Although the tools were not good enough and not sharp enough, water and stone pierced through them. As long as the hoe was swung well, how could there be an immovable corner? Poman firmly believed that with the help of advanced light energy constitution, the repeated waving did not make him feel tired, but instead promoted the growth of his body muscles, and his strength was also slowly increasing. This increase in strength is not due to absorbing sunlight, but rather to the development of his own muscles. When he was at Blue Star before, although he occasionally ran and exercised, his figure belonged to the lean type, and even when he took off his clothes, he couldn't see any ups and downs. Now, constantly waving the stone axe, coupled with the physical improvement brought by advanced light energy constitution, his body has undergone an incredible change in a short period of time. As the muscle lines continue to form, just half a day later, Poman was amazed to find that his upper body had already formed beautiful muscle lines. This kind of muscle is completely different from the bloated crab monster trained with creatine, but belongs to the perfectly proportioned lines that do not appear bulky, but are extremely beautiful. In one word, it is robust. After secretly admiring for a while, Poman changed to a stone axe and continued to chop trees. Remember to bookmark it. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Beishan Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Beishan Village. 3 days later, the wind was sunny and the sky was clear for thousands of miles. On the shore of the small island, standing on a strangely shaped wooden boat, stood a young man with a bare upper body. He was quite handsome, with a hint of excitement in his bright eyes beneath his jet-black hair. Supa tightened the wooden ties tightly at each point, ensuring that they were strong enough. Then, he released the vines tied to the boulders on the shore and vigorously rowed with an uneven oar in his hand. The strange ship brushed away from the shore, bringing layers of blue waves. "Goodbye, parents, I'm going on a long voyage tonight." Poman hummed a tune, waving his hands incessantly, his oars occasionally hitting the sea, and the gentle sea breeze made him feel incredibly comfortable. The days of drifting on the sea are dull and boring. Every day, I chop and chop the waves in the sunlight, and at night, I lie on a wooden boat and follow the waves. In the blink of time, Poman had been drifting on the sea for more than a month, and the strange ship seemed to have reached its service life. The vines were soaked in seawater and became slightly soft, and a gentle tear would crack them open. At this moment, Supa had been exposed to the sun for half a month, his body became stronger, his chi and blood were extremely vigorous, and his eyes occasionally flickered with energy. Although the wooden boat under him was about to scatter, he had already seen the coastline. Although there was still a long way to go, as long as the direction was confirmed, Poman believed that even if he swam, he could swim over. With a goal in mind, Poman couldn't wait any longer and didn't want to paddle slowly. He simply slapped the wooden boat under him, causing it to disintegrate and thick pieces of wood to scatter in all directions. Poman grabbed one of the pieces of wood in his hand, and his legs forcefully exerted force. Waves splashed behind him, like a high-power thruster, rushing towards the coast at a speed comparable to that of a swimming fish. In the evening, the scorching clouds in the sky reflected a bright red sky. Near the rocky cliffs of the mountains was a large silver beach, where several children dressed in coarse linen clothes rushed to the sea. They each wore a bag and were picking up sea goods washed up by the waves on the beach. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from the waves near the sea, and a young man with a bare upper body emerged from the sea. His muscular lines shone brightly under the sunset, to the point where one of the girls shyly covered her eyes. Finally arrived at the shore. Supa wiped the seawater off his face and walked step by step towards the shore, feeling a bit tired. However, when he saw the long-lost land, his heart was filled with a sense of security, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but lift slightly. After seeing several children wearing strange costumes, Supa's face showed a smile that he thought was very kind, and he asked, "Children, do you know where this place is?" The children looked at each other in confusion, and then one of them spoke up, %UN at #%. A few children chattered incessantly, their tone of voice very similar to that of Chinese language, but they couldn't understand. Upon hearing this, Poman knew it was broken and his language was not fluent. "I have a headache, it's a big problem. I dare say he still needs to learn the local language." She smiled awkwardly and left the beach, walking inside along a small path. As he walked, the village began to appear in front of him, and the sound of roosters and dogs gradually entered his ears. Poman looked at the fence, courtyard, and small bridge in front of him with a very familiar feeling. The style is very similar to ancient Chinese villages, but there are some subtle differences. There are no wires or lights, it doesn't seem like modern society. Poman speculated to himself as he walked into the village. Cooking smoke emitted from the chimneys of each household, and the local dogs who had been having fun outside also went home to wait for their owners to feed them. The appearance of an outsider undoubtedly raises the alarm of the villagers. After unsuccessful communication, a seemingly respected old man talks to several villagers. This person looks quite sturdy, but unfortunately, he is deaf and mute, and I don't know where he came from. I hope he's not someone who sneaks around. Yeah, looking at him like that, it seems like he can't understand or speak, but... Although Poman had the intention to communicate with many villagers, he couldn't understand the language and could only keep laughing foolishly, trying to put on a simple and honest appearance. A kind old lady gave him a linen shirt and two things that looked like wild vegetable balls, which should be a local food. Poman didn't refuse either, put on a linen shirt and took the wild vegetable ball. He smiled and arched his hand at the old lady. This young man doesn't look foolish either, he knows etiquette, but unfortunately he can't speak. Otherwise, he could talk to the unmarried girls in our village. He looks quite sturdy. The wife said and touched Su's broken arm, then smiled contentedly. At this moment, I didn't know what the elderly leaders were talking about. A black-faced man was called over, and after saying a few words to him, the man walked directly towards Poman. Poman was a bit puzzled, but after seeing his movements, he understood his meaning. The man waved at him and asked him to follow him somewhere. Although Poman couldn't understand what the man was saying, the black-faced man smiled and spoke in a rather ancient accent. Poman guessed that he was introducing the situation of this village. The two of them walked in front of each other, with the black-faced man occasionally looking back at Poman's reaction. After seeing him in a dazed state, he also gave up talking and led him to walk quickly. Before long, the two of them arrived at a courtyard full of weeds, and the house looked somewhat dilapidated. The black-faced man pushed open the tightly closed wooden door and arrived at the yard, gesturing for Poman to follow in. This small courtyard is not big. In addition to weeds, there is also a jujube tree growing in the center of the courtyard. Near the wall of the courtyard, there is an ancient well pressed down by a stone slab. The shaft used to lift water on the ancient well has been damaged and casually thrown next to it. To the north of the yard are two connected flat houses, with walls made of black mud and stones. A plant resembling an ivy climbs on top, and occasionally the sea breeze blows from afar, causing its branches and leaves to sway slightly in the air. The man with a black face pushed open the door, and a musty smell immediately hit his nose. As it was evening, the light was dim, and the room was pitch black. However, under Poman's supervision, he could see the situation inside clearly. The area is covered in spider webs, and green fungi have grown in the corners of the wall due to the lack of sunlight. The decoration is simple, with only one square table and two wooden chairs, one of which is already broken. Near the east wall, there is a slate bed with nothing on it, only a layer of dust has fallen. The black-faced man frowned and casually pulled away the spider silk that fell in front of him. He came to the table for convenience and took out a bamboo tube the size of a thumb from his arms. After gently removing the lid, he blew hard and sparks appeared. The man leaned the torch towards the candlestick standing on the table, and soon the bean-sized flame gradually ignited, growing bigger and stronger. A faint pine fragrance permeated the air, and the entire room also lit up. The black-faced man silently helped him quickly clean the room and even went out to bring back a bed that seemed to have been patched up multiple times. Poman felt a slight warmth in his heart, sensing the simplicity and kindness of the villagers here. Although he couldn't express it in words, his gaze towards the black-faced man also softened, no longer so distant. After finishing the task, the black-faced man nodded and smiled at Poman before leaving. Poman was the only one left in the courtyard. The huge moon hung on the pitch-black sky, with stars dotted around. Except for a few occasional dog barks, other sounds gradually became inaudible. Poman took out the chair and sat under the jujube tree in the yard, looking up at the moon and lost in thought. The passion he had just experienced has calmed down, and he feels a bit homesick. He misses his family on the blue star. I don't know if there's still a chance in this life to go back and see. Poman muttered to himself, his expression somewhat gloomy. He collapsed down and leaned his head against the back of the wooden chair, half squinting his eyes as he watched the huge, wheeled moon before slowly falling asleep. Everyone, Dragon Boat Festival Happy Duck, remember to vote for it. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Salt Field. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Salt Field. In the morning, Poman slowly woke up, with a few small dewdrops faintly visible on his linen shirt. After cleaning it up a bit, he was about to rinse his mouth with some water when someone knocked on the wooden door. Poman opened the door and saw that it was the black-faced man who brought him over yesterday. #UN% at amp%. The black-faced man waved his arm and gestured for a while speaking. Although Poman couldn't understand, judging from his gestures, he probably wanted him to follow somewhere. When Poman thought about his language barrier, he thought it would be good to have more contact with the locals. The black-faced man first took him to a fence yard where a gentle-looking woman was cooking. There was a 5 or 6-year-old child playing at the small dining table. Poman fixed his eyes and saw that it was one of the group of children who were rushing to the beach yesterday. As soon as he saw Poman, the little boy said a lot to the black-faced man. The black-faced man also had some doubts and quickly asked a few questions. After communicating for a while, he turned around and pointed to Poman, then pointed to his own mouth. Poman hurriedly said, "I can't understand what you're saying, but I'm not mute." Upon hearing Poman speak, the black-faced man reacted, with a clear expression on his face, as if he understood that the young man in front of him was not the deaf-mute rumored in the village, but not the local mandarin. At this moment, the gentle woman took out a pot and bowl, filled it with 4 bowls of paste-like soup, and also had a plate of dried fish. The black-faced man sat down with Poman, then gestured for a pickpocket position and slowly uttered a word. Poman immediately realized that the black-faced man was teaching himself to speak, and he followed suit. After repeating it a few times, the black-faced man handed Poman a pancake and signaled to start eating. The gentle woman drank the soup with a small spoon, taking small sips. Her movements looked more gentle, while the black-faced man was more wild. He tore the pancake into pieces and soaked it in the soup, enjoying it. The little boy also followed his father's example and started eating it. After taking a sip of the soup, Poman felt that there was a sticky granular feeling in it, and at the same time, there was a salty smell, very similar to the century egg lean meat congee he had drunk in Blue Star. Although he possesses advanced light energy constitution and does not need to eat, his appetite is difficult to let go. Poman felt that if he did not eat for a long time, his mouth might fade out. The food in front of me was simple, but because I hadn't tasted anything for a long time, it suddenly had a salty aroma and felt very delicious when I ate it. I immediately learned from the black-faced man to tear the pancake into pieces and soak it in the soup, then swallowed it with chopsticks. The little boy next to him looked at Poman in surprise. He couldn't understand and was tired of the shrimp soup and pancakes. Poman could eat them so well, which made him have a big appetite and ate an extra half of the pancakes. Not long after, the black-faced man finished drinking the shrimp soup from his bowl, and then Poman also ended the battle. When he put down the dishes, he even hiccuped. The black-faced man smiled slightly and got up, pulling Poman out. The two of them quickly left the village and walked along a long road until they arrived at a village in front of which hung a large sign with 3 big characters written on it. However, Poman did not understand the meaning of these 3 words, and the black-faced man beside him appeared much more restrained when he arrived here. There were 2 strong men in red clothes with swords and armor guarding the entrance of the village. The black-faced man took out a wooden plaque from his arms and respectfully handed it to the strong man guarding the door, while pointing at Poman and muttering a long passage. The strong man in red, who was holding a wooden plaque, frowned slightly, and then seemed to have thought of something. After throwing the wooden plaque to the man with a black face, he waved his hand like a fly, signaling the 2 of them to enter. The black-faced man put away the wooden signboard and was about to pull Poman into the village with a smirk. Just then, the ground began to shake, followed by the sound of horse hooves. The black-faced man quickly dragged Poman to the roadside upon hearing the sound, and lowered his head with a nervous expression. At the same time, he also signaled that Poman should quickly lower his head. The 2 strong men in red at the entrance of the village also straightened their bodies and stared straight ahead, without any previous lazy demeanor. Not long after, the ground trembled more and more, and 5 ink-scale horses, up to 3 meters high, galloped towards them, all the way at lightning speed. With the blessing of supervision, Poman could see everything clearly, even the fleas in horsehair could be easily detected. This kind of horse is completely different from the horses that Poman had seen on the Blue Star. It is not only taller, but also has black scales growing from the head to the neck. Its limbs are incredibly thick, and its hooves are as thick as the mouth of a bull. Its fur is as soft and shiny as the finest satin, and at first glance, it is not an ordinary horse. If Bull were here, he would be surprised to find that all 5 horses in front of him are BMW that can travel thousands of miles a day. 5 blue-robed men rode over from Mo Lee's horse, led by a short and sturdy middle-aged man who was not particularly tall, but behind him was a ring-headed sword that was even taller than him, looking majestic. Behind the middle-aged man, there were 3 men and 1 woman, among whom the woman was quite eye-catching. She had long black hair, a blue jade crown, and a white veil covering her face. She hung 2 butterfly thorns at her waist. The hem of her blue robe was parted, revealing a pair of slender and round jade legs, which appeared even more fair and tempting under the brown riding boots. As for those 3 men, 1 fat and 2 thin, with an ordinary appearance, their gaze occasionally brushed over the thigh of the white-veiled woman during their movements, revealing a hint of desire deep in their eyes. These 5 people had no intention of staying at the gate of the village, and rushed into the village with a burst of sand and dust, leaving the ground covered in dust. After the smoke and dust cleared, the black-faced man carefully glanced inside, then smiled at the strong man in red at the door and led Poman into the village. This fortress gate is built between 2 low mountains, with high wooden walls on both sides, extending all the way up to the mountainside, and several red-clad men patrolling the dense forest further up. On both sides of the village gate stood 4 or 5 arrow towers, 8 or 9 meters high, with red-clothed men carrying bows and arrows watching. From here, one could vaguely hear the distant cries, as if an army was practicing. The black-faced man did not go in the direction of the shouting, but led Poman to another small path. Not long after walking, a piece of architecture appeared in Poman's eyes. "That's..." Poman looked at the building and lost in thought. Combining with the books he had read before, he soon recognized what it was for. There are mud pits with white crystals inside, which are turbid liquids. There are also circular wooden towers next to them. In addition, there are several huge salt ponds distributed further away. Under the salt ponds, several square holes are dug out, surrounded by a circle of salt workers adding fuel and setting fire to the holes. Mist rises from the salt ponds, and the surroundings are shrouded in a vast expanse of white. This should be a salt pit. Salt pits are formed by stagnant and surging seawater in some relatively closed landforms in coastal areas. The seawater in the pits gradually increases in concentration after evaporation, and the brine in these salt pits can be directly used to make table salt using ancient methods. If nothing unexpected happens, this village is a place where some salt gang makes sea salt. The purpose of the black-faced man bringing him here should be to find a livelihood for him in this salt farm. The black-faced man's job is to pick brine here, take the brine from the salt pit to the salt pool, where there are dedicated people who burn a fire to fry salt with sea brine. After greeting the steward here, the black-faced man took Poman and started picking out brine, bucket after bucket. At the same time, he didn't forget to teach Poman how to speak during the break from work. As for Poman, he also picked up the brine with the black-faced man on a pole. Every time the black-faced man spoke to him at an extremely slow pace, he would take it seriously and think about the meaning of that sentence based on his gestures and the current environment. Brine is taken in wooden barrels, and although it may not be too heavy to pick up, many water handlers may feel exhausted and unable to stand up all day. The man with a black face is considered an elderly person here. Although he has spare energy, he doesn't walk too fast and carries water with an efficiency that maximizes his physical strength. Poman started this job very easily, carrying a load of nearly 30 kilograms without any pressure. At this time, the weather was already a bit hot, and there were not many clouds in the sky, so the water handlers were all sweating profusely from the sun. After a period of time, they would stop to drink water and rest, but Poman did not sweat at all, and even enjoyed working under the sunlight. The black-faced man squatted in the shade and took out a water bag to take a sip, his eyes strange as he looked at Poman standing in the sunlight not far away. "Why haven't you sweated on such a hot day?" the black-faced man asked in a puzzled voice. Poman didn't understand the black-faced man's question. As he pointed to the sweat on his head and walked over to touch his incredibly dry hair, he suddenly realized that the meaning of the sentence earlier was to ask him why he didn't sweat. Poman was speechless, so he could only spread his hand and said that he couldn't explain clearly. The black-faced man helplessly handed the water bag in his hand to Poman, made a gesture of drinking water, and then uttered a word. Poman immediately understood his meaning, followed by a reading, and then picked up a water bag to take a sip. "Yao Haizi, what's wrong with the little brother you brought? Can't you speak?" A skinny man dressed in a short fight walked over and said strangely. Yao Dashan nodded and said, "He came to our village a few days ago. He should be a survivor washed up by the waves at sea, maybe from somewhere else. Anyway, he doesn't know the official language here. He is really lucky to survive in the sea. I heard from the old man that there are demons deep in the sea, and even the experts of the Haiha gang dare not provoke them," the skinny man continued. Upon hearing this, Yao Dashan frowned and quickly interrupted, "Stop talking about Nyotia stick. It's time to go to work and rest. I reckon the steward will come and hit someone later." Poman saw the man with a black face leave and grabbed a pole to follow. At noon, the salt field managed the rice. Although it was not delicious, it was better to manage it enough. Yao Dashan and others ate several bowls of dry rice in a row. Poman felt that the food was not to his taste, so he only ate one bowl as a way to deal with it, so as not to keep skipping meals and attract attention from others. As evening approached, Yao Dashan and Poman received today's wages from the steward. It was a crescent-shaped ancient copper coin refined and cast from a type of copper ore. Returning to the village, Yao Dashan collapsed on his seat, feeling slightly tired. Poman saw this and said vaguely in his newly learned local language, "Tomorrow. Start work." Upon hearing this, Yao Dashan's face lit up with joy and he exclaimed in surprise, "You really have talent. You figured out the meaning in just one day. It seems like there shouldn't be any problem talking in a while." Poman heard this series of words and tried to search his memory, but found that he couldn't understand such a long sentence at the moment. He had to give up, shook his head in confusion, and arched his hand to say goodbye. Just as he turned around, the man with a black face stood up from the chair and grabbed his shoulder, saying in a very slow voice, "Stay and have dinner." Speaking of this, Yao Dashan also made a gesture of eating. Poman instantly understood his meaning and did not shirk it. He readily agreed, but in his heart, he planned to leave the 5 crescent coins he had just received with his family as food money for the next few days. The black-faced man has been helping him all along, and Poman is extremely grateful in his heart. Not long after, Yao Dashan's wife prepared dinner, and the little boy sat at the table preparing to eat. The dinner was very simple, with several green vegetables and dumplings, a stack of dried fish in the sun, and light rice porridge. The family chatted at the table, and time passed quickly. After dinner, Poman took advantage of Yao Dashan's entry into the inner room to get something and secretly handed the 5 crescent copper coins to Yao Dashan's wife before running back to his yard. Just as Poman was sitting on the chair, he was about to close his eyes and reminisce about what he had gained for a day when a knock came from the door. Supa smiled bitterly at the corners of his mouth. Without opening the door, he knew it must be the black-faced man chasing after him, wanting to return the crescent moon coin. Opening the door, it was indeed the black-faced man. He had an anxious expression on his face and was holding the 5 coins he had previously given to his wife. Yao Dashan solemnly placed the crescent coin in Poman's hand, and then said a long sentence that he couldn't understand before leaving directly. Poman felt a little helpless and said, "The villagers here are also a bit too simple. Then let's have the opportunity to repay their family again in the future." 2 in 1 chapter. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Black Iron Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Black Iron Body. This small seaside village seems to have no winter, and it is a warm season all year round. Towards the end of the year, it is also the most solemn sea god festival in the local area. Every household lights up and hangs colors, much like the spring festival on a blue star. The purpose of the sea god festival is to worship the sea god, pray for good weather in the local area, and ask for the blessings of the sea god. Fishing boats will not encounter demons while fishing in the near sea, and there will be abundant harvests every time. As for its ceremony, it is also quite cumbersome. The whole village, regardless of age, mobilized and led by the most prestigious elders in the local area, offering 3 sacrifices and offering 5 spirits. They also had to read a long sacrificial text and burn incense to worship. It takes a long time to prepare for the entire program to come down, and after this period of life, Poman has also mastered the local language, so normal communication is no longer a problem. The biggest remaining problem is not being able to read, but there are no teachers in the local area, and even there are few people in nearby villages who can teach and read. Therefore, literacy can only be temporarily postponed. After a year of understanding, Poman had a preliminary understanding of this world. However, due to the local closed environment, he only knew that this place belonged to a small village in Lianyan County, Dengfeng Prefecture, Pugua. There were many legends of demons and immortals in this world, and the ones who had the deepest contact with these ordinary people were warriors. Wuxia is a term used by ordinary people to cultivate their martial arts skills, warm their qi and blood, and refine their muscles and bones to a certain level. The gang that manages that salt field is the Haihe gang, which overlooks the 5 nearby counties. There are real martial artists in the gang. It is rumored that the blue-clad disciples in the Haihe gang have all reached the realm of the last martial artists, with extremely strong strength, making it difficult for 7 or 8 ordinary strong men to approach. However, in order to learn the local Mandarin, Poman did not reveal his strength. After a year of sunbathing, with the strengthening of his special physique, Poman's strength has made significant progress. At this moment, even his own strength was difficult to predict, but he knew that the rumored low-level warrior could not even defeat himself a year ago. My current self is more than 10 times stronger than I was a year ago, and my physical defense has reached a non-human level. Even ordinary swords and halberds are difficult to harm me. The main reason for this is that he used the remaining 225 energy points from the last time to extract new abilities, and the advanced light energy physique evolved again, becoming a type of existence called the black iron body. The black iron body is equivalent to a weakened version of the Superman steel body, with a higher enhancement efficiency than the advanced light energy constitution, and there are also qualitative changes in defense. However, his biggest concern now is shaving because ordinary knives are difficult to cut off his tough beard, so every time his beard is too long, he has to pull it off himself, which is not to mention the sourness. Poman's current physical strength is terrifying in the mortal world, just like those horizontal training masters who have mastered the diamond immortal skill and the golden bell shield iron cloth. Ordinary weapons leave white marks on his skin at most, and it is wishful thinking to harm him. As for whether higher-level warriors can harm him, this has not been compared and remains unknown. Poman sat in the yard, his mind twitched, and he opened the light curtain of the purple source wheel, name. Poman, realm. Nun bloodline. Black iron body, ability. Light energy enhancement, supervision, superhearing, energy point. 0, minimum 10 energy points can be extracted once, extractable quantity. 0, click to extract, current extraction target. Bronze Superman 0.28 per thousand, in thousands. Superhearing is an ability that he automatically developed after extracting the black iron body. At first, this new ability made him feel a bit unbearable, surrounded by noisy sounds, human, insect, and animal sounds, shouting and snoring. In the first few days, he couldn't sleep peacefully, and it took more than a month to gradually master this new ability, allowing him to relax and relax. Alas, since the extraction of the black iron body, the energy points have been depleted. After searching for various things, none of them contain energy. Is it really necessary to travel through famous mountains and rivers to find the traces of immortals? Poman frowned and looked at the empty energy points. In this world, there are also those who seek immortality. Those who have achieved great martial arts can only hope for further progress or extend their lifespan by relying on the legendary immortal family. The stories passed down by word of mouth also include warriors who are sincere in their pursuit of immortality. Therefore, in the hearts of all warriors, immortality is a higher pursuit. However, this pursuit is too elusive. Although some have succeeded, there are also more Crucian carp who have passed away in the process of searching for immortals and have not seen any side of the immortal sect. For ordinary warriors, reaching the pinnacle of martial arts is already extremely difficult, and for them, immortals are legendary beings. Humble. 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 The knocking on the door shattered Superhuman's drifting thoughts and pulled him back into reality. Is that Brother Yao? Poman stood up and walked over to pull the latch. Upon opening the door, he saw that it was indeed Yao Dashan, who had a dark skin, who was looking for him. Brother Su, it's almost the Sea God Festival. Your sister-in-law steamed some buns, and I'll bring you a few. You don't need to open fire tonight, eat while it's hot. Yao Dashan smiled and handed over a white package. Poman rushed over immediately, feeling a steaming temperature in his hand. It was obvious that the steamed bun had just been brought by Yao Dashan when it was out of the pot. Thank you very much, Brother Yao. He said, good day, to my sister-in-law on my behalf. You're welcome, Brother Su. After the Sea God Festival, let's go to the salt farm a few more times. When we gather enough money, we can send our tiger child to the town to learn some skills. Well, Huzi is indeed at the age of learning things and can't just wander around the village all the time. Poman lowered his head and looked at the buns in his hand, his heart warming up. Subconsciously, he recalled his loved ones living on the Blue Star. During festivals, I miss my family twice. Although the Sea God Festival is different from the Spring Festival, the festive atmosphere can easily make people in a foreign land feel a faint sadness. After Poman sent Yao Dashan away, he took out a steamed bun and ate it. The Yao Dashan family has shown me great kindness. After the Sea God Festival, if that plan succeeds, I will settle down with their family and repay it. Pa chewed on the delicious hot buns and thought to himself. The newly cut oil bamboo in Nanshan exploded in the flames, and the night of the Sea God Festival was filled with laughter and joy. Under the vast night sky, with countless household lights on, Poman sat alone in the courtyard, staring at the slightly eerie moon under the jujube tree and staring blankly. The Sea God Festival lasted for 3 days, during which Yao Dashan even strongly invited Poman to have a reunion dinner together. However, Poman had been here for some time and had a good understanding of local customs. After all, he was an outsider, so he politely declined. After the holiday, the small village regained its daily peace, and the young people working in the town or county town had already left. Early in the morning, Poman was taken by Yao Dashan to the salt farm to work. Along the familiar path, Poman saw the village from a distance, and the sign hanging above read, Hi-ha gang, if nothing unexpected happened. The strong men in red clothes at the door were chatting aimlessly. Just after the Sea God Festival, these disciples outside the red clothes were not as serious and fierce as they used to be, with a smile on their faces. A usually fierce person suddenly smiles, which can make others feel flattered. Yao Dashan was also like this. When he arrived at the gate of the village, his words were a bit confused. Hurry in, work will start soon inside. The strong man in red on the right threw the wooden plaque to Yao Dashan. At this moment, the ground began to vibrate, and the hissing of ink-scale horses came from afar. I've been moving recently, so I can't be unhappy with coding. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Conflict. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Conflict. The Law of Lamentation. After hearing the commotion, the strong man in red immediately straightened his posture, his eyes became serious, and he shouted sternly, Go to the roadside and stand with your head down. Don't look up, the martial arts adults are coming. In no time, 3 ink-scaled horses came rushing towards them, flying with dust and dust. Yao Dashan quickly pulled Su's tattered collar to the roadside and said, Brother Su, hurry up and lower your head. Master Wu has a bad temper. If you look up, you may get whipped. As he spoke, Yao Dashan's throat twitched and he swallowed his saliva vigorously, feeling very nervous and a bit flustered in his heart. Among these warriors, one has a very bad temper. As long as an ordinary person dares to look up at them, he will indiscriminately attack and beat them. Many people in this salt field have suffered losses, so the ordinary salt workers here no longer dare to look up in front of the warriors. Poman has now learned the local Mandarin and doesn't want to continue living in the mountains and valleys to waste time. He plans to join a martial arts force to seek development, so he needs an opportunity to showcase his own strength. Having strong and powerful abilities makes it much easier to join a faction. He first lowered his head as usual, but as the horse approached, a slight smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, slowly lifting his head, and his eyes were filled with calmness. The strong man in red on the left noticed Poman's movements and quickly shouted softly, "You bastard, you're not going to die anymore." But now it was too late, and a cold gleam appeared in the eyes of the short and strong man leading the scale horse in the distance. Looking at Poman's slender figure, his eyes were filled with jealousy. Humph! Where did the mountain and wild village man come from? How dare he look directly at my envoy? Seeking death. The short and sturdy middle-aged man spoke, and his whip swung fiercely, transforming into a grey shadow. With a whine in the air, it hit Poman's face. If this whip is hit, even an ordinary person would be disfigured and leave a long, extremely ugly scar on their face. The ruthlessness of the heart of the short and strong middle-aged man is evident, completely disregarding the lives of the villagers. When Yao Dashan realized something was wrong, he didn't have time to react. He could only watch as the whip hit Poman's face. He couldn't help but close his eyes and couldn't bear to see Poman's bloody appearance in the next moment. However, although the speed of the whip was fast, it did not happen as imagined by everyone. The two strong men in red only felt a blur in front of them, so Poman reached out and firmly grabbed the other end of the whip, without moving a single bit. What? The strong man in red on the right exclaimed in surprise, as if he had seen a ghost. I didn't read it wrong, did I? Another strong man in red rubbed his eyes. Brother Su. Yao Dashan also froze. The changes in the field continued, as the ink scale horse was galloping at full speed. The short and strong middle-aged man couldn't stop in time when he saw the whip being caught, and both the man and the horse continued to charge forward. This creates an eerie scene. In theory, if Poman doesn't let go of his whip, the scale horse will drag Poman forward. But, Po's legs curved slightly, and he grabbed the other end of the whip with a fierce pull, nailing himself to the spot like a nail. But the short and strong man was dragged unsteadily, and his whole body flew horizontally from Li's horse, being pulled off the horse's back by a huge force. Not long in the air, the short and sturdy middle-aged man instinctively released his whip and fell from mid-air to the ground. Bang! Oh my butt! Smoke and dust are rising everywhere. Behind him, two men in blue, one fat and one thin, quickly stopped and dismounted beside the short and chubby middle-aged man, helping him up. They looked at Poman with some surprise. Who are you? How dare you harm the people of our Haiha gang, said the tall and thin one slowly, with a hesitant expression on his face. After all, just now Poman's performance, his strength is so great that he has already entered the realm of martial artists. Once a matter involves a warrior, it must be treated with caution, as one mistake can easily lead to a conflict between two forces. The chubby man beside him had a cold and sharp glint in his eyes. He silently pulled out his plain knife from his waist and slightly twisted it, with the tip of the knife aimed at Poman. Two junior brothers, copy this guy and teach him a lesson. At this moment, the short and sturdy middle-aged man swung his big sword and rushed forward, shouting, "Kill," in his mouth. His movements were also extremely rapid, and most people would definitely be intimidated by this momentum, making it difficult for them to move and ultimately being left to be slaughtered. Master Wu, there's a misunderstanding. Yao Dashan exclaimed anxiously. Supa smiled and moved his feet slightly. A piece of gravel flew up from the ground and directly hit the short and sturdy middle-aged man's chest. Puff. The short and sturdy middle-aged man was struck by lightning, his eyes instantly widened, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. He fell to the ground and his expression instantly became listless, as if he had been severely injured. The other two disciples in blue were shocked by the situation and knew they had encountered a master. They quickly bowed down. This senior, it was my senior martial brother Wu who was rude just now. Please spare his life. The tall and thin man quickly opened his mouth, his tone becoming extremely respectful. For these novice warriors who have just entered the martial arts realm, the most important thing when wandering in the martial arts world is to show their skills, otherwise once they provoke the strong, they will die without knowing how. Secondly, it is important to be aware of current affairs. If one should lower their attitude, they must lower it. Especially for lower-level disciples like them, even if they are killed by experts, the gang will not offend a master because of this. The chubby man in blue clothes beside him was somewhat indifferent, thinking that the person in front of him was not much stronger. He felt that with just a shout, hundreds of peripheral disciples practicing in the village would rush out and be able to kill the person in front of him with indiscriminate knives. His eyes kept turning incessantly. Poman knew from the expression on the chubby man in blue that he wasn't giving up. So he picked up a stone on the ground and gently pinched it, revealing a flurry of stone powder in his hand. Seeing this scene, the fat man in blue suddenly trembled, his breathing became heavier, and a cold sweat broke out from his back. My goodness, fortunately I wasn't impulsive just now. The person in front of me is at least a 7th grade martial artist, and I have never seen this skill before. I'm afraid my internal energy can already cover my entire body. As soon as he thought of this, the chubby blue-clothed man's little eyes became even more flustered. He tried hard to squeeze out a smile and said, "Sir, we know we're wrong. Please, for the sake of the Haiha gang, let go of our fellow disciples. The headquarters is still waiting for us to transport the green salt. If we go back late, it won't be easy to explain." All that happened before him left Yao Dashan somewhat bewildered, his eyes wide open. Is this still the Su brother I know? The short and sturdy middle-aged man lying on the ground, although bleeding, did not harm his life. Knowing that he had kicked the iron plate, he obediently knelt down on the ground. Although the man has gold under his knee, it is done without harming his life. If one's life cannot be saved, is dignity useful? A short and strong middle-aged person has lived for half a lifetime, and has seen quite a few characters. At this moment, he only feels frightened and confused. Having offended such a person, he was really afraid of dying here. As soon as he thought that his wealth and status, which he had accumulated for half a life, would turn into a bubble after his death, he simply pressed his head to the ground and cried with tears streaming down his face, "Great Xia, I was wrong. Please don't forget to be a petty person and spare my life. My hometown is from the nearby Wulin village, and there is an old mother who still needs to be served." "Shut up, I won't argue with you this time. If there's another time, I won't let it go lightly." Poman frowned and said coldly. As soon as he said this, the short and sturdy middle-aged man known as Senior Brother Wu suddenly stopped speaking and dared not continue to make a sound. "You all come forward, I have a few things to ask." Poman waved his hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Salt Transport Team. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Salt Transport Team. The three of them looked at each other, not daring to neglect, and approached Poman with trembling fear. Their eyes were fixed on the ground, not daring to look directly into Poman's eyes. "What kind of experts do you have in the Haiha gang?" Poman asked lazily. The tall and thin one quickly spoke up and said, "Your Highness, our blue-clothed disciples are only one level higher than the red-clothed disciples on the periphery. Most of our strength is the lowest level 9th grade martial artists. Up there is the green-clothed deacon, who is the 8th grade martial artist. Basically, each branch will have a green-clothed deacon sitting at the helm. Up there are 5 purple-clothed elders, who are the 7th grade martial artists, sitting in various counties occupied by the Haiha gang. The highest strength is the leader of our Haiha gang, who is a 6th grade martial artist. When mentioning his own gang leader, the tall and thin eyes couldn't help but show admiration. Supa nodded completely. Now he didn't know much about the strength of the martial artists, but judging from these 3 9th grade martial artists, although their strength was better than ordinary people, they were still far behind him. If we speculate like this, the probability of the guild leader, who is a 6th grade warrior, surpassing him is not high. In this way, his plan can be implemented. Can you introduce me? I, Su Poman, have admired your sect leader for a long time and would like to join your sect. Although Su Poman was asking, his tone carried an unquestionable firmness. The chubby blue-clothed man's eyes twitched, revealing his essence as he took a step forward and said, Sun Wei, am willing to recommend you to our senior. If you are a skilled expert who wants to join our Haiha gang, our sect leader will definitely welcome you to the extreme, at least giving the treatment of elder purple-clothed. The tall and thin man beside him tightened his expression upon hearing the words. He didn't expect that Sun Wei would take the credit for it. He quickly followed suit and said, I, Chongpeng, am also willing to recommend you to the senior. Senior. I, Wu Santong, am also willing to recommend you. Why not let the 3 of us return to the headquarters and report this matter to the gang leader together? Wu Santong suggested after wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. Su Pa nodded, moved his body, reached out and grabbed the money bag from Wu Santong's waist. Just offended me, this is your apology gift. Wu Santong covered his chest, his hanging heart finally landing. Losing some silver money is okay, which indicates that the senior in front of him will no longer punish himself for his previous recklessness, and he will no longer be in danger of his life. For a moment, his heart was settled, and he quickly smiled and said, it should be, it should be. This is even a small person's apology. If the senior can accept it, the small person feels extremely honored. Su Poman nodded slightly and opened the money bag to look inside. He found 40 or 50 silver crescent coins made of silver, which were more valuable than copper coins. The currency circulating in Pugwa is this type of crescent-shaped coin, resembling a crescent moon. 1 gold crescent coin can be exchanged for 100 silver crescent coins, and 1 silver crescent coin can be exchanged for 100 copper crescent coins. Ordinary families living in the county town, if they don't have much investment, their annual expenses are only about 10 silver coins. If they live in a township, they will spend even less. This short and sturdy man carries around 40 or 50 silver coins with him, indicating that martial artists are far superior to ordinary people in terms of earning money. You 3, go ahead and wait for the escort of the green salt. Later, I'll go back to the headquarters of the Haiha gang with you. Su Poman said slowly after holding the money bag in his arms. Yes, sir. The 3 of them respectfully responded and led their horses into the village. Yao Dashan stood not far away, his face full of complex expressions, suddenly feeling that the Su brothers in front of him were somewhat unfamiliar. Su Poman walked up to Yao Dashan and said with a smile, Brother Yao, this is for you. When I settle down at the headquarters of the Haiha gang, I will take you 3 to live in the county town. At that time, your Huzi can also study in the school in the county town and learn some real skills. If he wants to learn martial arts, I can find a martial arts teacher for him at the Haiha gang. As he spoke, he stuffed the money bag in his arms into Yao Dashan's hand. Su. Brother Su, I can't take this. Yao Dashan quickly refused, his face a little frightened, and his hand quickly pushed back. Su Poman grabbed Yao Dashan's shoulder and looked him in the eyes seriously, saying, Brother Yao, you have been kind to me. These crescent coins are insignificant things to me, and with my strength, I can easily get more money. Besides, you also need to consider your Huzi family. If you go to live in the county town, Huzi can have access to a wider world and have a greater chance of becoming famous in the future. Don't you always want to honor your ancestors? Listen to me, take them quickly, and consider them for Huzi. It seemed that Yao Dashan's dark face hesitated for a moment because he mentioned the tiger son. He gritted his teeth and accepted it with some shame, saying in a deep voice, "Brother Su, I'll treat it as if I borrowed from you. I'll repay you when I have money in the future." "Huh, Brother Yao, what's our relationship? You're so kind to me, it's nothing. You don't need to come to work these days, let's use this money to make a living. When I hear from you, I'll settle down and take you over." Supa smiled and hooked Yao Dashan's shoulder, eliminating a lot of the previous burden. A hint of unnatural redness appeared on Yao Dashan's dark face. Although he had previously impressed Su Poman's strength, he now realized that he had made friends with such a powerful martial artist. The days ahead are sure to be very prosperous. "Thank you very much, Brother Su. I need you to worry more about Huzi's matter. Don't be so polite, it's too far-fetched. Huzi is my nephew, and I will definitely arrange things properly in the future." "Brother Su, are you a warrior?" "I guess so." After the two of them talked for a while, Yao Dashan went home, and Su Poman walked into the village under the gaze of two brave men in red clothes who were afraid of heaven. Following the main road, Su Poman arrived at a huge martial arts arena. At this moment, there were 10 red-clad disciples standing on the martial arts arena, with Sun Wei and 3 blue-clad warriors at the forefront. "I've met Mr. Su. Have you met Mr. Su?" It seemed like the rehearsal was done well. After the leader Chongping shouted, the 100 red-clad disciples behind him all shouted out with great momentum. Su Poman waved his hand and walked up to Sun Wei and the 3 of them. "Are you all ready?" "Reply to Lord Su, everything is ready. The green salt has already been loaded onto the truck, and we are waiting for you to depart together," said Chongping respectfully. Selling salt in Pugua is a lucrative industry, where not only ordinary people need to eat salt, but also martial artists consume a lot of salt. The Haiha gang manages salt pits in 5 nearby counties, using the profits from selling green salt to support the cultivation of martial artists in the gang. Each county has a branch office, which oversees several local salt farms. At the beginning of each month, someone is sent to collect the green salt from the salt farms. Let's set off then. It's still early at night. By the way, which county is your headquarters in and how long will it take to walk? Su Poman continued. Sun Wei stepped forward and respectfully said, "The headquarters is in Qinlin County. It only takes half a day to drive with all your might on a black scale horse. However, if you bring the ox cart that escorts Qinyan from the rear, it will be slow and take about 2 to 3 days. Mr. Su, we have prepared a banquet for them in the village. Why don't you finish your meal and leave?" Su Poman looked at the sun in the sky and felt that if he delayed finishing his meal, it would be noon. He shook his head and said, "Let's go straight." Yes. The 3 of them dared not oppose Su Poman's intentions. With a command from the rear, 5 ox carts loaded with green salt slowly drove out under the driver's control. End of this chapter.